Very Bad Wizards is a podcast with a philosopher, my dad, and a psychologist, Dave Pizarro, having an informal discussion about issues in science and ethics. Please note that the discussion contains bad words that I'm not allowed to say, and knowing my dad, some very inappropriate jokes.
Whatever eternity is here right now.
And nowhere else. Or everywhere else.
The Cleveland boss has spoken. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Who are you? Who are you? A very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Good man. They think deep thoughts, and with no more brains than you have. Pay no attention to that man. Anybody can have a brain.
You're a very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Just a very bad wizard.
Welcome to Very Bad Wizards. I'm Tamler Summers from the University of Houston. Dave, we were just normal academics, publishing papers, teaching courses, going to conferences, but then we heard the call to voyage into the unknown world of podcasting. At first, we were reluctant, one of us more than the other, but eventually we ventured into the mysterious realm and at the same time plumbed the depths of our own souls. With the aid of the wise guide Paul Bloom, the ambiguous deity Sam Harris, and the mystical herb kratom, we've traveled to the jungles of Costa Rica, the mountains of Montana, the Isles of Vancouver, and the plains of Columbia, Missouri. We've spoken to the diviner Ted Chiang, we've consulted the blind seer Borges, and been passed over by the virgin goddess Lori Santos. We've encountered monsters and obstacles. We've died and been reborn, and now return to convey our forbidden knowledge to the outside world. Dave, are we nearing the end of our hero's journey?
Yeah, can I just pause and say how good that was? I rarely would compliment you on air this boldly, but I didn't even think you had a question prepared. I thought, for our audience, we've been preparing hard for this very long episode. So yes, we have returned. We've given boons to the world, and we're ready for the death of a microcosm and to announce the death of the macrocosm as soon as that
happens. It's right around the corner, I think. This, by the way, is the extent of my preparation. So
it was a long book, right? Yeah. So we should say what we're doing.
In case it wasn't clear, we are going to be doing The Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell, where he famously describes the hero's journey and the meaning of myth and the meaning of dreams and the kind of universality of the stories that we tell each other that are passed down from generations to generations across cultures, across time. This was, we should say, the topic that was voted on by our beloved Patreon supporters. We do a listener-selected episode, and they chose this, but we were just starting the semester.
We refused the call for a while.
We did at first, just because it is a really long text and quite involved. And so just getting through it. I think I'm excited to talk about it. We've only said very scattered things, and I don't really know what you think about the book as a whole.
Yeah, I've been hiding it. So.
First, though, I feel like we have a segment that's never been titled, but we could. Every so often we do something that is full heroin cringe. I think this definitely qualifies. So this is a video op-ed in the New York Times by Marcy Shore, Timothy Snyder, and Philosophy's own Jason Stanley. The title of this video essay the headline has shifted a lot. It used to be, "We study fascism at Yale. We're experts in fascism at Yale, and we're leaving the U.S." That part is always the same.
Right.
So basically, 3 scholars from Yale who study fascism, I guess they've toned down, they're not experts anymore, And
my YouTube still says we're experts in fascism. We're leaving the U.S.
Yeah. We just thought we'd play it. I don't know if you've heard this before. A little context. Jason Stanley is a philosopher. Came up around the same time as I did, but obviously he has a much better pedigree. He was much more successful by the standards of analytic philosophy. I met him once, and he was kind of an asshole to me, and I knew I didn't like him. And so,
good. That makes me feel better about the light mockery that I will heap on him.
The light mockery.
Mockery.
Total asshole, like looking at his phone the whole time as he was being introduced to me. And like, I didn't care. I didn't know who he was. He was doing epistemology then. And then just had a few just kind of meltdowns on Twitter that were fun if you are on academic Twitter and the people who make fun of academic Twitter. Just a couple meltdowns involving SAT scores, IQ, various different things that I don't remember the details of. But he's a good Schadenfreude producer.
Right. At some point, I felt sorry for him. But it was a prime example of how some people just should avoid social media. Like, it just breaks them,
And maybe the public eye in general. Although I guess we'll see. And I don't know who these other two people are. Do you?
No, I don't know. All I know is that they're actually married to each other. So, Shore and Snyder.
All right, should we play? We're just going to play the first couple minutes because it is very funny. And if you had to show somebody one video of why Democrats lost to Trump, I think you could do a lot worse than showing people this video.
I'm a historian of totalitarianism.
I look at fascist rhetoric.
I've been thinking about the sources of the worst kinds of history for a quarter of a century.
I look at fascist rhetoric.
Whatever the equivalent of having a face for radio is, having a voice
for video, for silent video.
A voice for silent movies.
But also he's doing something with his left hand or right hand that's very funny too.
The whole time, I think I texted this to you, Jason Stanley looks like he just learned how to sit down.
And a lot of this also, you should just watch the video because we're not going to do much better. But a lot of it is also the editing of it seems very self-important already without them saying anything.
I almost paused it 3 seconds in to just say already.
Yeah.
Just already, this is smacks of like self-importance.
Doesn't take long to go full heroin cringe and thus qualify for this segment.
Experts say the constitutional crisis is here now.
The Trump administration deporting hundreds of men without a trial.
A massive purge at the FBI to make people afraid of speaking out against him.
So they show clips of what Trump is doing to deport people, like all stuff that I think is terrible and I disagree with, and we can talk about that
and
later.
Is dangerous and
yes,
exactly, all of that's true.
All of that stuff is true. But I just don't like fear mongering. This just feels like propaganda. And again, I agree with it, but I just don't think it should be cut this way, especially with what their point is.
Yeah. I mean, just that little clip that ended with the newscaster, it does, you're right. I agree with almost everything they're saying, if not everything in those clips, but the way it's done makes it feel like propaganda, and I don't like getting propagandized.
That's right. That's the feeling, like a reactance.
I'm leaving to the University of Toronto because I want to do my work without the fear that I will be punished for my words.
They're moving abroad. It's typed.
The lesson of 1933 is you get out sooner rather than later.
If we haven't said it, the whole point of this is to announce that they're leaving the U.S.
Yes.
And it's okay, you're you're leaving because what? Because Jason Stanley says because he can't get his work done without fear. The point that's being made is, okay, you don't see it coming. All of this stuff works slowly, but we're leaving because of that. I just, first of all, don't believe it.
Right.
I think they got pretty nice offers from University of Toronto.
One thing you can definitely learn from Russians
is that it's essential to set up centers of resistance in places of relative safety.
We want to make sure that if there is a political crisis in the U.S., that Americans are organized.
Okay. So one of the lessons Jason Stanley, expert in fascism, says is you have to set up centers of relative safety. So this is what I think. Like in his mind, Toronto is one of those centers where you can fight fascism, but because he's so valuable, he can't be on the front lines like a foot soldier like you or me. He has to be in this place where he can fight kind of his underground battle, but from the outside.
Right.
Like Che.
Right. Centers of resistance. Yeah, no, that is definitely the vibe. Like we got to go and issue orders
from the relative safety of Toronto.
We've just gotten started. You haven't even seen anything yet. It's all just kicking in.
They have this video of Trump like in an empty balcony of almost like the Mulholland Drive
right.
theater.
I was thinking the old Muppet.
Oh yeah, that's right too. Yeah, he's in one of those where Waldorf
and Stout.
Yeah. He could have been that too. He really could have. I think he'd be really good at that.
My colleagues and friends, they were walking around and saying, we have checks and balances, so let's inhale, checks and balances, exhale, checks and balances. And I thought, my God, we're like people on the Titanic saying our ship can't sink. We've got the best ship, we've got the strongest ship, we've got the biggest ship, our ship can't sink. And what you know as a historian is that there is no such thing as a ship that can't sink.
What you know as a historian is that there is no such thing as a ship that can't sink.
I feel like maybe engineers would know more about that.
Yeah.
There is something about her, and I don't want to get personal about it, other than she just seems really upset, like out of breath upset.
Well, she says, we have checks and balances, inhale. We have checks and balances, exhale. She makes it sound like everybody is on the verge of a panic attack and just keeps repeating this mantra, checks and balances, to try to steady themselves when, meanwhile, the Titanic is sinking.
Right. I like that. Say checks and balances, inhale.
Yeah.
Checks and balances, exhale.
Even, I would say, non-historians think that countries aren't going to last forever, checks and balances, thank God.
That's another thing. Is that the argument, that because it's possible for a country to fall, that therefore, again, it's too fear-mongering for me.
It turns you against something that you actually believe in and are deeply worried about. It's remarkable. I think this is a democratic, that's the source of their genius, is that they can make you hate something that you actually fully support. And
The golden age of America has only just begun.
It's also just this out of context stuff. Trump saying the golden age of America has just begun is shot in this way that makes it sound super scary. But that's a normal thing for a president to say. Obama could have said that first term, Obama.
Right, and they cut to him saluting, to Trump saluting. It makes it seem just like we're in a military state.
America has long had an exceptionalist narrative. Fascism can happen elsewhere, but not here.
But talking about American exceptionalism is basically a way to get people to fall into line. If you think that there's this thing out there called America, and it's exceptional, that means that you don't have to do anything.
All right, we can stop it here, I think. But this whole part, the implicit message of this thing, and this is why I think it's worthy of mockery, is that they're the ones who are finally taking action and doing something about it, when in fact what they're doing is getting the fuck out. That is literally the extent of what they're doing.
And that's why, Tamler, I felt fine making fun of this, because, in the meantime, this shit at Harvard happened where Trump's administration is threatening to kick out international students, all stuff I'm worried about. This is actually deeply concerning to me. I don't like it. I'm a child of immigrants. Not that I need to be scared of that. But this whole video is to say we're bouncing, peace. Peace out. Have good luck, America.
But by bouncing, we're actually the only ones who are trying to put a stop to this. Everyone else is just drinking the American exceptionalism Kool-Aid, but we are forming a vanguard of resistance by leaving. And that's
and there's something that bothers me about the implicit sort of accusation that we're not doing anything if we're not leaving. When the truth of the matter is, like, most people don't have the luxury of getting offered a position at like a, at the whatever the center of resistance of Toronto, the relative safety of Toronto. They're extraordinarily lucky to be in a position where if they want to leave, they can leave. And the rest of us are sort of stuck here.
Yeah, I'm in Texas. They just are about to pass a law where like students can snitch on their professors for being teaching too much like critical theory or Marx and they'll have like actual power to. But also it's like I'm not fucking leaving because like my attitude is, okay, then I'll fucking then they can try to fire me, And I'm a little bit like, to me, like just staying and still doing what you do and speaking what you believe, it's not that courageous, but it's as courageous as getting the fuck out because you got a really great offer at a world famous university.
Yeah. I agree. I think like I have that feeling too, where it's like, okay, if they're gonna come for me, I guess come for me. Yeah. Which again, like you say, it's not like we'd be heroes for that, but I just don't,
You tore apart the president of your own university, like
right. And yeah, literally, like I was like, okay, I guess if they want to come for me, they can come for me. Of the three, Tim Snyder in this video strikes me as the most reasonable. And when you read the description on the video, it says, like, it gives the reasons for all of them leaving. Yeah. And it goes, Professor Snyder's reasons are more complicated. Primarily, he's leaving to support his wife.
Oh, okay. Right. Now we get it. He probably is so humiliated that he got dragged into this thing with her and Jason Stanley. There's already probably some, like, if it's not already a polycule, it's there's some drama among these three probably. And all this is scary. Like they show that Tufts university student that was just dragged off the street because she co-authored an op-ed. Yeah, just got immediately taken to Louisiana. She's finally been freed. But like that stuff is scary. If you're an international student, like you can't say shit right now and think that you might not get deported. That's right there is the issue. That's like the proximate thing that we should be terrified about and we should try to support them. But it's not professors that study fascism and write books about it and go on NPR to talk about it. Like that's not the thing that I think they're happy because like it turns people against Democrats and liberals who are deeply not inclined to be MAGA in any way.
Right. Yep. Don't propagandize me with Jason Stanley in my face. That's all I gotta say. It's just do better. I fucking hate it when people say that, but this really makes me want to say New York Times, do better.
Yeah, well, this is who they are deep down. This is who they are deep in their bones. So, all right, let's talk about something we support rather than are embarrassed about. We'll be right back to talk about Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, and the meaning of myths.
Welcome back to Very Bad Wizards. It's that special time, extra special time on this episode, an episode that is due solely to the support of our listeners and our listening audience. We like to just express our appreciation and general gratitude for the support that everybody gives us. We appreciate all the ways that you guys keep us going, One of the ways is we hear from you. So if you'd like to email us, you can do that at verybadwizards@gmail.com, or you can tweet or blue sky at us, at Tamler, at Peas, or at verybadwizards. You can go on Reddit and engage with your fellow listeners if that's your thing by going to reddit.com/r/verybadwizards. And you can follow us on Instagram. Give us a follow at verybadwizards. You can even rate us, give us some feedback on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate the reviews. You can do that on Spotify as well. And if you would like to support us in more tangible ways, you can go to our support page and find the various ways you can do that. For example, you can go to PayPal, give us a one-time or a recurring donation on PayPal, or you can buy some swag, some mugs, some t-shirts, and you can become part of the Patreon community that gave rise to this very episode. And it is a chance for us to give back to you if you do so. At the $2 lowest tier, you just get to support us morally, but you also get access to our ad-free episodes and some of my beats. Collection of my beats. If you want to join one of the bonus tiers at $5 a month and up, you get access to hundreds of hours of bonus content, our Ambulators podcast series, our Severance podcast series, the Reintegrators. You get tons of one-off episodes, lots of stuff, David Lynch stuff, Star Trek stuff, anything you can think about. We've been doing it for a while now, so we get a big back catalog for you. At $10 a month and up, you get all of that, plus access to our 5 Brothers Karamazov episodes, some intro psych video lectures, some of Tamler's Plato lectures, and you get to vote on the episode topic, like the one that we just did today. That was a result of people who get to vote. And at the $20 and up tier, you get access to everything I just said. Plus, you get to ask us anything for our monthly Ask Us Anything series. You get to watch us respond to those in video. At $5 and up, you get to listen to all of those answers, but you get to ask it at this tier. But whatever you do, even if you never write to us or join our Patreon or anything, if you're listening, I just want to say thank you. We very much appreciate you. Thank you for being part of this community. We're really proud of it. And we hope that you're enjoying this long-ass 500-page book discussion. All right, let's dive into The Hero with 1,000 Faces, our Patreon selected episode that took us 6 months to do. finally doing it. So a quick summary. The Hero with 1,000 Faces, first published in 1949, argues that myths across cultures share a fundamental structure that he refers to as the monomyth, or the hero's journey. Campbell was a professor of literature at Sarah Lawrence College, and he worked on comparative mythology and comparative religion. And he builds a lot in this book on psychoanalysis, especially Jung, comparative mythology, and folklore. And he proposes that the journey of the mythic hero, in which the hero receives a call to adventure, leaves behind his ordinary world, undergoes trials, gains knowledge, and returns transformed. He argues that this is symbolic. It's a reflection of our psychological development and transformation. Transformation into what? We'll talk about. Campbell sees this recurring narrative not just as a storytelling pattern, but as an expression of some deep universal truth about the human condition and our path to individuation or enlightenment or dissolution. With that, shall we dive into it?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what you thought, how much you knew about Joseph Campbell before, and to what extent it was what you expected and to what extent it wasn't.
So I obviously knew about this and I don't know, just exposed to it. It's a very popular thing to talk about when you're like learning about stories, even just learning about film, like you hear about this. But I had never read any Joseph Campbell. I had seen the Bill Moyers stuff, like way back in the day. So Joseph Campbell did like a very, I think, well-received, was it a series of interviews?
Yeah, like a mini-series, I think, yeah.
Yeah. And so I definitely was familiar with that, but I hadn't watched it in a long time. So diving into this, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. In general, I like it. I like reading about it. I love bringing together, unifying this stuff. I've always been fascinated by the commonalities of myths across cultures, so I like that. What I think I wasn't sure about, what I was expecting was more diving into the psychology, more of the Jungian stuff, which clearly he's building on, like just more relating it to that. I didn't expect so many sort of detailed descriptions of Hindu myths, Native American myths. Like he spends a lot of time just recounting those stories.
Yeah.
And then like I have some issues with the general like method that he uses.
Yeah, so like I think it's hitting on something really deep and true and fascinating, which involves, like you said, the unifying element of these ancient stories across the entire world. It's just fascinating when you see that, you know, so many different cultures had flood narratives, and the flood narratives tend to involve some kind of purification. And, you know, we teach a lot of this sometimes, and students are taken aback by, if we read Gilgamesh, like the commonalities between parts of Gilgamesh and parts of Genesis, you know, and then the religious ones among them get a little shaken by that. And I think he does a good job of, you know, presenting this not in a way that's threatening to anybody's personal religion. I think he thinks they are all in their own ways manifestations of something true, although he does think certain religions take themselves literally rather than metaphorically, and that's like a big mistake. I think all of that is true. I was honestly a little surprised. I felt like this was extremely Buddhist, Hindu, like in terms of the grander cosmological story that's being told, it sounds exactly like that. And so that makes me wonder, is Christian mysticism, which I'm less familiar with, tied? And I think people say there are a lot of parallels. In fact, they could just both be two ways of trying to make the same point about what transcendence boils down to. And I think that's really interesting, you know, like I think comparative religion would be pretty interesting. And so this is like comparative religion, comparative myth, all kind of boiled into one, you know, sort of framework. And, you know, I agree that like I could get bogged down because basically what he does is he describes a stage, say in the hero's journey, and then he just carpet bombs you with various myths from, you know, Africa or Ireland, and followed by Greek, and followed by some Hindu sect from the like 2nd millennium BC or something. And it's just like in the weeds of it, it doesn't get all tied together as much as I wished it were. And I found myself tuning out, glazing, skimming for parts of that. And then other parts, I just had the ding, ding, ding. Oh, this is like, it all boils down to this. So, you know, he is someone I feel like that's necessary for the modern age, and I'm glad he exists as a way of inspiring enthusiasm and interpretive energies in people. But I was also, I just found the actual presentation of it to be not quite what I hoped for. And then also the psychoanalysis, like it had a little bit of the denial of death kind of, we all, as Otto Rank demonstrated, beyond any possible doubt, you know.
Right. There is modern consensus on that the unconscious motivations of the Oedipal complex are,
exactly. And I think he does probably try to shoehorn in to a lot of myths, and sometimes he gets certain details wrong. And when he does that, you start to wonder, well, if I know that he did that with this myth that I'm very familiar with, then what is he doing with some of these other ones that I have no idea? But even that, even the psychoanalysis stuff, like, I do think that there's something deeply true about all these myths being both journeys into the external world, but also journeys into your own psyche and the depths of your own being. And the fact that those two mirror each other, and the way he brings that to our attention, I think is really important, and honestly not something that I am always alert to. Just the kind of dual track that a lot of these myths are running on, both without and within.
Yeah. Like you made a good point about how he's respectfully towing the line by not diminishing any like particular religion or culture, but at the end of the day, and he gets into this in the Bill Moyers segments. I think Bill Moyers at some points pushes him to say, like, are you saying that the Christ story isn't literally true? Like, aren't people going to be upset about that? And I like his response. His response tends to be something like, no, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying it's true in a deeper way. And that, like, if you take it literally, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
And it's that point that is a universal deep truth about what it is to be human and what it is to be a successful human, I guess. Like, I don't know how to say it, that you will miss if you turn your myths into literal lessons.
Yeah.
And he thinks, I think, modern religions, like these sort of like organized religions that run the world now, have lost the connection to the deeper truth by going full literal or, full sort of like, this is the story, don't depart from it.
Yeah, I think he does think the modern age has led to a lot of spiritual
like alienation, maybe?
Yeah, degrowth kind of.
Yeah.
That said, it's not like they weren't taking things literally in the Spanish Inquisition,
Yeah.
and you don't really hear about that as much. Certainly not in these texts. The extent to which some of these myths were used to start, 100-year wars and kill a lot of people and torture a lot of people and hang and behead and burn a lot of people. So that's the part that I think has always been there to some degree, even like Socrates, like accused of not believing in the gods, maybe because he took it metaphorically like you're supposed to. But that strain, it seems like has always been around, and you never hear him talk about it. Certainly not in Hero of a Thousand Faces. A little bit with so we should say that the Bill Moyer's The Conversations has been turned into a book that I recommend called The Power of Myth, where you get a little less of the psychoanalysis and a little bit more of just a conversation about the big picture elements of his views much later in life than a hero
than this. Right. It's impressive. Like, I got to say that, like, it's an impressive work. I did have like one big question for you, which I've asked you before, because sometimes I wonder what you think about this kind of grand theorizing. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right to bring up Denial of Death sort of as a comparable book. And I'm glad that we've read both of these, but doesn't it get too neat for you? I mean, you generally are anti-systematization. And this does present a really neat story.
Yeah.
That is a big story. It's a big theory. What's the difference between this kind of systematization and the kind that makes you recoil immediately?
Well, so I don't take this kind of systemization seriously, like in the way that you're supposed to if it's an empirical study and you're supposed to say, oh, this is science and this is data and this is empirical and this is, the numbers and the analyses and all that. So even if they mean it in a systematic way, I don't take it that way. And that's true for someone like Joseph Campbell. It's true for when the young I've read. It's not true for someone like Hegel or Kant, where I am put off by some of the big picture. But then, and same with Marx, it's like the good thing about the people who try to unify it all and bring it all together, even if that means jamming a bunch of square pegs in round holes, is that it gives you a lot of new ways of thinking about things, connections that you hadn't drawn.
Hedgehogian.
Yeah, there's good things about a Hedgehogian view, which this is. It's just, I don't buy that because, I know so many myths that don't fit into the 12 steps or whatever of the hero's journey. And so I just don't take it seriously like that. I think the book itself barely takes itself seriously in that respect, just because it's so episodic. It's so boom, 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 boom. Here are examples, on to the next thing. I actually wished it did a little more big picture, bringing all of this stuff together than it actually ends up doing. But I know what you mean. It's like I always recoil at systemization when analytic philosophers do it. And yet here I am celebrating these big picture ideas people.
But there is something about that different. I know it when I see it. And there's something about it that I knew didn't contain the part that makes you recoil. And I don't know how to describe it, but it is a big picture that's okay with being more flexible, sloppier. I don't know how to say it, where the difference between Kant and Jung is Kant has the details figured out, and there can't be one jot or one tittle that disagrees with him in his metaphysics.
Right.
Whereas something like this is okay, if I tell him Gilgamesh didn't quite exactly fit this structure, it's not going to bring it all down. He's just going to say, well, yeah, but it's the deeper truth here, like we're getting at, right? Like, and you can point out, and I assume that you read some of the criticisms of Campbell that are exactly as you say, where, you know, people who are experts in specific mythologies or cultures that Campbell dives into are like, yeah, you're getting a lot of the details wrong. Like you're, as you said, square pegs and round holes. Like they don't like that.
Cherry picking, all of that.
Exactly, the cherry picking stuff. Where I think Campbell would say, all right, that's fine, but like, come on, tell me that there isn't something that strikes you as the deeper, bigger picture here.
Yeah.
I don't need all of the myths to fit, but can I point out the parts of the Adam and Eve myth that do fit? So it's like this messier, I don't mean it in a pejorative sense, but you know what I mean? Like it's a kind of big picture theorizing that's different in kind because it's just a more flexible, chiller attitude toward.
Yeah, and it's full of excitement. Like he's very excited as he's unloading all of it, and it's a pointer to something, even when it doesn't fully kind of tell you exactly what it's pointing to. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't, and those are actually, I think, some of my favorite parts of the book. We've actually read both parts. The first part is the hero's journey, and the second part is the more cosmological elements of it. And I really was struck by the second part, as we'll talk about, and its connections with the Eastern thought that I'm familiar with. And I think that's a strain in this book that goes all the way through. And I wouldn't have necessarily thought to connect those ideas with some of the myths until he alerted me to that. And for that, I think that's going to bear a lot of fruit for me as I go back to them.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like the part 2, the cosmogonic cycle is, I don't even know if that's how you say cosmogonic? Is that how you say it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never said it.
Right. That gets more to like the metaphysics of it all. But the first part, where it's just describing the hero's journey, is really the part that's famous.
Yeah.
Right. Not only did Campbell, I think, exert an influence in saying, isn't this interesting how all these myths are similar and share this structure, but it's also sort of come to be a way in which people prescribe how to tell a good story. And like screenwriters take this stuff and they like eat it up. And that's why it's not hard to think of like your favorite sort of story of a hero that's become a movie and fit this into it. Like obviously Star Wars, but it's super easy to just think of like the Lord of the Rings or whatever. You know, these are just the ways.
The Matrix.
The Matrix. And I found it like actually kind of fascinating, but hard to know how much of this is because Campbell and how much of this is because this is what humans are.
Because Campbell was right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, and the reason that's hard or impossible to tease apart is because, like you said, like all these people, like George Lucas was explicitly influenced by Joseph Campbell in coming up with Star Wars. And so in that case, we don't have to wonder. We know.
Right.
And then in other cases, I think it's a little more complicated. But yeah, I have a friend who works in the industry and is not somebody who was well versed growing up in ancient mythology or comparative religions, but he knew Joseph Campbell. And I think that's just taught in film schools. It's taught all across. And
Dan Harmon, by the way, is like a huge Joseph
right.
Campbell guy.
Yeah. All right. Should we talk about what a myth is? Just to lead off the discussion about what he thinks a myth is. This is a quote from the prologue. It would not be too much to say that myth is the secret opening through which the inexhaustible energies of the cosmos pour into the human cultural manifestation. Religions, philosophies, arts, the social forms of primitive and historic man, prime discoveries in science and technology, the very dreams that blister sleep, boil up from the basic magic ring of myth.
Yeah, it's not how I would define a myth. That is more his thesis, I guess, about what's going on.
I guess it's not a definition, but I do think it gives you the sense of the scale of what myth does. Like it actually opens up some kind of portal from where we're in our blinkered human world who just look at the world through the five senses. And myth opens up this secret portal that allows us to understand something about the universe that we couldn't understand, with our schema, and also something about ourselves that we couldn't understand.
Yeah, exactly. The transformative power. It is our connection to the cosmos. Basically, look, we're born into the world limited to gaining knowledge through these five senses. We've sort of like lost the connection. Being born is losing a deep connection to the cosmos. And almost in a Kantian way, he's like, okay, there's this phenomenal world.
Yeah.
That's all we have access to until we connect with myth. That gets us that deeper connection to, he doesn't say noumenal realm, but like the truer realm.
Yeah.
And I mean, I like that, but at the same time, like the stickler in me wants to say, well, there's a lot of myths that just are just like stories that may not be doing that work or not have, they didn't do that work. Like does he think all of them connect you in this way to the deeper? Like I think that they have to be this kind of myth, this structure of myth, not just like one day, this god cried and that caused the like oceans to appear.
But I do think for something, if you're asking Campbell for something to be passed along for so many generations, it must open up something, some kind of door into some part of human nature or cosmic nature that is the reason why we're still talking about it. So he says it's been the prime function of mythology and rite to supply the symbols that carry the human spirit forward, in counteraction to those constant human fantasies that tend to tie it back. So to me, that means like the fact that people were repeating the Odyssey and the Iliad, through oral tradition for hundreds of years, like that is something that fed people in a way that they needed to be fed because they were getting too caught up in whatever the politics and the worldly concerns that they had to deal with on a daily basis. And there's something true about that, although it's not going to be true, like you said, about every single thing that calls itself myth.
Yeah. So sort of loosely connected to what we're talking about, I sometimes found myself wondering what the hero's journey, what is the work that it's doing? So on the one hand, you can imagine the hero's journey gives this sort of, these symbols provide us with a connection that like rips us back from like our mundane ties to the phenomenal world and brings us back into sort of unity with the consciousness. There's a way in which that might work through the telling of these myths and through the understanding of them. But sometimes it seems like what Campbell is saying is that we must go through the hero's journey.
Yeah.
And that's a different thing than just like telling the myths and understanding them as these symbols. There is this seemingly a call to humans to actually, you yourself, heed the call to adventure, leave your ordinary life, cross the threshold. And I found myself wondering what that would mean for even me to do. That is until your brilliant introduction to this episode.
We've done it.
You told me that we've already done it.
Yeah.
So I'm fine. I'm good.
That's a classic aspect of a myth, is to wonder how to do something that you've already done. It's always been within you the whole time,
Right.
Tap your little red shoes and you can go home now.
But you know what I'm saying? Yeah,
I do. Like what? So in response to the first part of what you're saying, like he thinks the job of myth is in part inspirational, right? Like it needs to inspire us to, in our own way that our own culture allows us to do, to transcend the boundaries that we might be trapped in, that might constrict us. And, I think that can mean a lot of different things. Like it can mean finding a safe area just north of the border in Toronto to fight fascism in a realm of relative safety. I don't think it means that, but I think the goal of myth is not to think that you're going to go into a literal cave or a literal belly of the whale, but it's to inspire us within the context that we find ourselves in to make the most of that spiritually and in ways that sometimes the modern world makes it hard to do, with your Richard Dawkinses and your David Pizarros.
Yes, I'm honored to be mentioned in the same breath. Yeah. So maybe I'm asking too much of Campbell to tell me what exactly like I should do. Obviously, this is something that there is no answer to. But it does feel like a different thing to come to an understanding via myths that life and death mean this thing, like that when we die, we're sort of like released back into the cosmic energy, like
the void,
and come to terms with what that means for me, versus inspiring me to be a hero of sorts, or maybe that is what it means. Like for instance, when he dives into the Jesus story and tries to present it as this sort of symbolic of the journey that we should go through, the atonement with the Father and the trials and the death and the resurrection, you can take that as just being like understand what being human is, like gives us some clarity about what it means to be human, versus saying like, get off your ass, like go do something, go have the courage to depart from the comfort of your life or the comfort of understanding this phenomenal world in the way that you do.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. It's a call to do that. And sometimes in, the way the modern period is and its emphases on the material world and materialism will make that extremely difficult. And so myth is a way of universalizing something that can seem very specific. We should talk about it's like also the connection with psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
So he says, dream is the personalized myth. So when we dream, we are doing a myth, but just for ourselves. Myth is a depersonalized dream. That's a really interesting way of understanding myth, too.
Yeah.
Both myth and dream are symbolic in the same general way of the dynamics of the psyche. But in the dream, the forms are quirked by the peculiar troubles of the dreamer, whereas in myth, the problems and solutions shown are directly valid for all mankind. The bold and truly epoch-making writings of the psychoanalysts are indispensable to the student of mythology, for whatever may be thought of the detailed and sometimes contradictory interpretations of specific cases and problems, Freud, Jung, and their followers have demonstrated irrefutably that the logic, the heroes, and the deeds of myth survive into modern times. In the absence of an effective general mythology, each of us has his private, unrecognized, rudimentary, yet secretly potent pantheon of dream. So I guess the idea is that when we lose contact with myth, our dreams become this kind of surrogate for connecting us to the deeper parts of our unconscious and our psyche that are not present to us.
Yeah. So it's like it's always there in us.
Yeah.
And that's like something that he returns to. Like in the end, one of the primary points that he's trying to make is there is something in all of us that is connecting us, and we must find it. And one of the ways that especially modern people find it, because they've been stripped of sort of like the myths that people have had throughout history, is through dreams. And so he actually like describes individuals' dreams.
Yeah.
And so he says, "Oh, look at this guy's dream. Isn't that crazy that it fits the hero's journey?"
Right. It's like Daedalus and the maze or whatever.
Right. And honestly, like I don't know what to make of it. I find it kind of intriguing. So tying it to, for instance, the myth of the fall of Adam and Eve, which he does, the fall of Adam, where he says, look, the consciousness that we walk around with, the one that is like our ego in Freudian terms, is divorced from the deeper truths. But our unconscious, like in the Freudian sense and in the Jungian sense, is always going to maintain that link to the deeper stuff. So for Freud, diving into your own unconscious is going to give you insight. There is a power there. And for Freud, that libido, that psychic energy that is motivating all of your action, like for Freud, getting past like the ego defenses and getting into understanding what truly is motivating you was liberating. And I think that Campbell is trying to say this about the unconscious, where I think he's probably believes that we're all generating these myths and they become this common language of culture.
Yeah.
Because they were in us somehow.
Yeah, they're channeling our unconscious.
Yeah, right. And in the absence of the shared myth that has given us the structure for understanding this, our unconscious is nonetheless going to be giving us clues.
Yeah.
Like the personalized myths are going to be there.
Yeah.
And so that's the way it's Jungian, although I don't think he ever really explicitly talks about the collective unconscious, which was weird to me. Like I thought I was going to get a lot more Jung here. Because it seems clear that what he's saying is like, no, look, there is this collective unconscious.
He does mention it just in a footnote. And he just says, compare Jung archetypes of the collective unconscious. That's all. Yeah.
That is weird because clearly it's driving it. So while I think a lot of Freud was kind of wrong.
Hooey?
Yeah. I find it compelling that our myths are born out of the common state of affairs that we find ourselves in, which is the condition of humanity, which contains some universal energy that we all have just by dint of being organisms that are alive in this world.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you there. I think it's super intriguing. And so here's a quote where he says, in fact, it may well be that the very high incidence of neuroticism among ourselves follows from the decline among us of such effective spiritual aid, talking about mythology. We remain fixated to the unexercised images of our infancy and hence disinclined to the necessary passages of our adulthood. That right there strikes me as totally plausible, that denied this portal, this window, just these glimpses of something grander, something more transcendent, something deeper within us. We are just like children, metaphorical children, and we can't break through of that. And so Freud, I think, is good at the diagnosis of certain elements of the things that are holding us back and constraining us and trapping us, and right that we need to be liberated from that, and that something about our unconscious minds, like a discoveries about that, will have liberatory potential. It's just like the details of how that works is where, you might think that Freud was off, and maybe even about his more specific diagnoses, like with the Oedipus complex and
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, this was the point of the denial of death was Freud almost got it right.
Yeah.
But whereas Freud was thinking that it was all about the Oedipal conflict and, your mom or whatever, it was actually about death. It was about coming to terms with the fact that we're all going to die.
Should we go into the hero's journey, like the different steps?
Yeah, let's do it, because we can talk about the connections to the Freudian stuff there. So in the hero's journey, like the various steps, the very first step is the call to adventure. So one example that he uses is when the Buddha sees all the pain and the suffering in the world. And this just sparks something.
Yeah.
Like there is something that just initiates the whoa, something is wrong. Something in the world is telling me that I need to get out of here. I need to realize some deeper truth.
You're in your own world with all the different, very particular aspects of your life, like making money. Yeah. If you're a king, you're ruling over the land. Right. And then there is a call to do something that will take you out of all of that.
Then there's the refusal of the call, which is really what you were talking about about the Freudian thing. Here's where Campbell likens the refusal of the call to Freud, the psychoanalytic notion of a fixation. It's an inability to mature to the next stage, and you're taking refuge in your mother or in this idea of your father. And here's where he talks about the wandering Jew.
Yeah.
Which is the myth. I actually kind of like this myth. So there's the myth of the wandering Jew is that Jesus, when he's bearing his cross and walking to his crucifixion, passes a guy, and the Jew just goes come on, can you speed it up? And Jesus says okay, fine, because you said that, I will go, but you'll be waiting for me until I return. And so the wandering Jew is somebody who refused the call, and because of that has been wandering the world, never able to get into the next step.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Campbell thinks a lot of people, maybe the vast majority of people, we're all wandering Jews. We're stuck in this domain. Yeah, and we will live and die stuck in the domain. And the importance of myth is to try to shake us out of that, slap us in the face. But, maybe most people refuse the call. We all get the call, but maybe the majority of us refuse it.
Right. To turn down the red pill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's true. The Matrix is a really good example.
Totally. The Matrix is, but again, you have to think they were also influenced, if not by Joseph Campbell himself, the same things that Campbell was interested in.
Right. So then there is the supernatural aid is one of the steps. So where there's a mentor or a helper, like a magical helper that appears to guide or protect the hero.
The Obi-Wan Kenobi.
The Obi-Wan, yeah, the Gandalf of Lord of the Rings, the Morpheus in The Matrix.
Yeah.
Then there's the crossing of the first threshold. This is where the hero commits to the journey, right? You've gotten some tool from your magical mentor. You've moved beyond the refusal of the call, and so you fully commit to the journey and you leave behind the ordinary world.
Yeah.
And that's the first step into what Campbell calls the sacred zone, or of the universal source. He uses that word source a lot.
Yes.
The source of energy.
Yeah. Again, like it's like awareness or consciousness, or it's just something that is behind everything. It's the one thing that is unified, that is behind everything that is manifest and diverse or multitudinous or whatever.
Yeah. And this universal source, I think I saw this in his interviews with Moyers, where he's just like, that's just life. That's when you realize, like, what Freud called the libidinal energy. This is just the stuff that life is made of. It's energy. And it sounds almost like he's getting sort of metaphysical in the like crystals sense, where when he says like the world is made of energy, like it's all energy. But again, like I think there's something deeply true about that. The source of life is this. We all have some psychic energy.
It's like the ocean of awareness, the ocean of consciousness, the true self in like Advaita Vedanta philosophy. It is something that I think a lot of these traditions share under different names, is this just kind of substratum of the universe that actually fills you with energy and has this ability to break you out of your jail of the body and of your particular circumstances into something beautiful and grand. And that is where he is traveling to, the hero.
Yeah. And then he encounters danger, right? So when you cross that threshold, that there's what Campbell calls the belly of the whale, which is symbolizing the hero's separation from the phenomenal world, the known world, the ordinary world, and diving into that realm of transformation that is dangerous.
Yeah.
So it's referring to the Jonah story or the Pinocchio story.
Right. And he says the popular motif of the belly of the whale gives emphasis to the lesson that the passage of the threshold is a form of self-annihilation.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it is this travel towards universalizing yourself. In this sense, it is kind of Kantian.
Right. But it's also ego death, kind of.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
It's ego death. And yeah, when you're in the belly of the whale, it's just, you're shattered in some sense.
I feel like here's where he has the Saturn devouring his children. It's that famous painting of Saturn devouring his children.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Does he connect that to?
I think that it's the annihilation of the self. I think he also talks about Kronos.
There's a lot of eating of your family in Greek
That's right. Like, and you think about the belly of the whale. Like,
yeah.
That is an eating of you.
Do you ever have dreams where you're being eaten, or you're eating someone, or you're in the belly of something?
I don't remember having any dreams like that. Mostly than having sex with people I shouldn't have sex with.
No, I don't even get those dreams. I get like more tedious dreams.
like having to prepare for the podcast.
Yeah, or like having to like put on pants that just like I can't find my belt or something, you know?
Yeah. All right. So that whole part has been the section on departure.
That's where there's no turning back. Once you've crossed the first threshold, you're in the belly of the whale.
You're in the danger zone.
You're in the danger zone. Like, you're on it now. And you don't get off until the last stop.
Right. And here's where you get the trials, the road of trials, where the hero undergoes tests or ordeals, sometimes has help from his allies and friends.
And the enemy is also like there. The Odyssey is such a good example of this. On his way back with his men, it's very episodic. There's all these different things. There's the Cyclops. There's Circe, who turns people into pigs. There's this one thing after another, and it's very supernatural. It's very dreamy. That's the other thing. Once you're across the first threshold, you're in dreamland, mythic dreamland. Anyway, it's going to be very supernatural. It's not going to be your everyday life. You're in something that you didn't even know existed.
Right. Where do we get the Trials of Hercules? Is that written is there a work that describes the Trials of Hercules?
Not that I know of. Actually, yeah. That's not a myth I'm that familiar with.
And here's where I like what Campbell is saying during this trials where he said discussion of trials where he says that the myths help us go through the trials. And he thinks that contemporary life enlightened individuals who've rationalized the gods and devils out of existence.
Yeah.
That sort of leaves them unable to get the aid for going through the trials.
Right.
And that's part of our modern problem. We don't know how to do the trials anymore.
Which leads to neuroticism.
Yeah.
And leads to high anxiety. It leads to all the different things that we suffer from. I'm sure it's more complicated than we've turned ourselves off to myth, but it's not totally wrong either. That we've been denied the tools in this STEM society to deal with the deeper elements of what it means to be human.
Yeah. And I think this is what people mean when they say the humanities is important and shouldn't be abandoned.
Yes.
And I think you're right. It's more complicated than just connecting with myth, but it is losing some part of helping you be a human.
Yes.
Be
a successful human, whatever that means to you.
Right. I have a quote here that he says sort of as you go through the trials, Campbell says, one by one, the resistances are broken. Speaking of the hero, he must put aside his pride, his virtue, and submit to the absolutely intolerable. And then he finds that he and his opposite are not of differing species, but one flesh. So he's starting to talk about this realization that we are all one unified thing.
Yes, right. Which is very Jesus-y, as I understand. And very also, I think all the Eastern religions have ultimately, there's an interconnection, an interdependence among all human beings and the earth as well.
Yeah. And here is where he describes one of the stages as the meeting with the goddesses, where the hero encounters a figure representing ultimate beauty or love or unity, a symbol of grace or enlightenment. Here's where I found it harder to that didn't seem like a universal part, but
no, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, he definitely gives, this is one of the ways where he just piles them on,
Yeah.
And I'm not familiar with 95% or more of them. And here's also where he gets a little, where the psychoanalysis might be,
Freudian,
the Freudian stuff maybe not a good influence.
Yeah. Freud gave this just through his influence, everybody was just kind of deluded into thinking in this psychoanalytic way, in a way that I think was actually damaging. I think he would have broken from the shackles of the Freudian interpretation. It would have just been better for him, because it really is a section where everything is about the comforting mother, and the mother represents this being who's at peace with no anxiety. But then at the same time, he talks about the next stage, the woman as the temptress.
Yeah,
and so. I don't know. His relationship to women seemed a little weird.
The desired but forbidden mother.
Yeah.
But also the absent, unattainable mother.
Yeah.
But again, even this stuff, I agree, this was not my favorite part of it, but there's some cool stuff here. He says, the ultimate adventure, when all the barriers and ogres have been overcome, is commonly represented as a mystical marriage of the triumphant hero soul with the queen goddess of the world. This is the crisis at the nadir, at the zenith, or at the uttermost edge of the earth, at the central point of the cosmos. And it's this is where you are at the outermost edge. This is like Odysseus on Calypso's island, way the fuck away from everything else. And she offers to marry him, and he could marry her and just stay there forever. But he doesn't. And she represents this one thing, you get to this point, you've traveled this far, you could stay there, you know?
Right.
And it's beautiful. It's she's immortal, and she's at every part of the hero's journey. You need temptation to not return back to relate what you've learned.
There's a part here where he's diving into the psychoanalysis that actually gets close to denial of deathy in a way that I actually liked. So he's talking about in the office of the modern psychoanalyst, the stages of the hero adventure come to light again in the dreams and hallucinations of the patient. Depth beyond depth of self-ignorance is fathomed, with the analyst in the role of the helper, the initiatory priest. And always after the first thrills of getting underway, the adventure develops into a journey of darkness, horror, disgust, and phantasmagoric fears. The crux of the curious difficulty lies in the fact that our conscious views of what life ought to be seldom correspond to what life really is. Generally, we refuse to admit within ourselves or within our friends the fullness of that pushing, self-protective, malodorous, carnivorous, lecherous fever, which is the very nature of the organic cell. Rather, we tend to perfume, whitewash, and reinterpret, meanwhile imagining that all the flies in the ointment, all the hairs in the soup, are the faults of some unpleasant someone else.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Again, kind of diagnosing modern ills pretty well.
Yeah. So I actually am fine. Like, we could just talk about this. This section ends with the ultimate boon, where the hero gains the object of the quest.
Which is interesting because it's not. Does the hero always gain the ultimate boon? Was there something to necessarily get beyond the journey itself and the understanding? I don't know. How do you interpret the ultimate boon?
Yeah, I guess the ultimate boon could just be the understanding, right? And so where like the Buddha gets the knowledge and must come, right? Because this is right before the return to the regular world.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's just a knowledge of what life is, right? Or how to achieve enlightenment. Or sometimes it is a gift. But, I think about sometimes it's just that they completed their mission, like killed the bad guy.
Yeah. But I feel like a lot of myths are way more pessimistic than that. And a lot of the time, the thing that and maybe this is the boon, but the thing that they're traveling to get, they realize that they can't have and maybe didn't want in the first place or something like that. But I think often these things they can come off more as failures than as successes in terms of at least what they thought the journey was about in the first place.
No,
like
you're
the
right.
Buddha, it was successful, like definitely. Like he got the ultimate boon. But I don't feel like Odysseus did. I don't feel like Gilgamesh did. Like even someone like Moses or some of the Judaic heroes, it's never clear that they got Jacob get the ultimate boon, No,
right. Like Moses was prevented from entering the promised land.
Yeah.
You're right that like there's this common theme of like that's not what you were looking for in the first place. Like, so your failure gives you some enlightenment. And I guess you could describe that as a boon.
Yeah. Or it's the Wizard of Oz thing. I realized that what I was searching for was within me the whole time.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's actually what Campbell gets to in the end anyway.
Yes, exactly. When you get more cosmological about it.
So then you have the return, and I like the stages of the return. The part that I really do like is the difficulty of fitting back into the regular world. That resonates with me somehow. Like you've been transformed, so it's hard to go. You're a different person when you go back to the regular world.
Yeah. So this is from much earlier, but he's talking about it more generally. He says his second solemn task, the hero, and the deed, therefore, as Toynbee declares, and as all the mythologies of mankind indicate, is a return then to us, transfigured, and teach the lesson he has learned of life renewed, right? So this return and reintegration with society, which is indispensable to the continuous circulation of spiritual energy into the world, and which, from the standpoint of the community, is the justification of the long retreat, the hero himself may find the most difficult requirement of it all. And part of the difficulty, I think, is the incommunicability of what the hero has found. So you're in this stage where, in these successful quests, you have the thing, but it's hard to make other people who are trapped where you were before you undertook this to see that.
Yeah. You've had a transformative experience.
That's right.
The successful person who comes back and integrates, Campbell says he's like straddling two worlds, and he learns to balance the two. And this is the part that I like, that when he's back and he successfully is now integrated, or at least has one foot in the normal world, but managed to retain the knowledge.
Yeah.
Because I also like the part where it's hard to get into the world because you might lose the knowledge, and that's like waking up from a dream where you're struggling
to remember it.
You want to keep it in your memory. Yeah. But if you're good at that, then you have this freedom to live. And this is where it gets like, I think, right where he says what the hero now has is this ability to live in the moment that gives him this freedom. It's like coming, I don't know, this enlightenment that says like, okay, now I'm really living.
Right. I might even be doing the same things that I was doing before.
Yeah.
But I have this energy coursing through me that I've connected with. And part of my job is to give other people access. Now, they might not know like that I'm doing that for them. And in fact, they might think I am like Socrates. They might end up putting me to death for trying to convey it. But I think, Socrates is a great example of this mythic story, is trying at least to get other people to take their own hero's journey or to show them the way of how that is possible. Snap them out of their ruts, their little ruts and their small concerns.
You're right that Socrates is a good example, and it's like the Jesus story.
Yeah, very similar, those two things. Yeah.
And the Buddha story where it ends in death, but a death as a freedom, like a death as a release, a death as like rejoining the source.
Yeah, and an inspirational death, a death to be kind of modeled. Not that you want to be crucified or drink hemlock, but the attitude towards it is
right.
Yes. So I really do like this. Like he says, how to teach again, however, what has been taught correctly and incorrectly, learned 1,000 times throughout the millennia of mankind's prudent folly. That is the hero's ultimate difficult task. How to render back into light world language the speech-defying pronouncements of the dark. How represent on a two-dimensional surface a three-dimensional form, or in a three-dimensional image a multi-dimensional meaning. So, yeah, I think this is, again, true of the Eastern religions, and I think true of a lot of mystical traditions. You have to render into concepts something that is prior to concepts and that is fundamentally non-conceptual. And that is the ultimate difficult task of the hero that they can fail at or succeed at, or, it's kind of a paradox. It's like, how do you do that?
Yeah, totally.
How communicate to people who insist on the exclusive evidence of their senses the message of the all-generating void? That's what I ask myself to you, how am I going to communicate to David Pizarro, who just insists on numbers and regression analyses?
Beneath the numbers, I know that there is the universal source.
Yeah, beneath the numbers.
So that's the hero's journey. And now we dive into the cosmogonic cycle part of the book, which we've already kind of we've sprinkled throughout his understanding of this, but just maybe we should highlight parts of this that I'm sure seemed important. In my notes, when I was thinking about what Campbell was saying, again, I really like this part. Even when he talks about the unconscious, where he says that myths aren't just symptoms of the unconscious, but they're deliberate statements of spiritual principles that have remained constant throughout human history, paralleling the enduring form and nervous structure of the human body. And this is where I like it. I'm like, look, part of it is just what we are. We're universally biological entities that have this force of life. And there is just going to be some deep truths about what it means to live this short-ass life as a biological entity and die and somehow come to terms with this.
Yes. And mythology is our way of trying to do that.
Yeah. And we're connecting with all of the other conscious beings who have lived and died.
Yes, who are all trying to make sense of the same fundamental problems that we're trying to make sense in at a conscious level or an unconscious level.
Yeah.
There's a line here that's kind of interesting. Mythology, in other words, is psychology misread as biography, history, and cosmology. So really, ultimately, what this is an exploration of our own being. It's our psychology in the broadest possible sense. And I agree. One of the things we just did, Kiss Me Deadly, right? And, think of him chasing the big what's it, not knowing what it is. And it turns out to be the thing that will destroy him and possibly humanity. But it's also an exploration of his own soul, his own selfishness, his own shittiness as a person, and maybe his repressed sexual desires, depending on how you read that. It is it works on two levels. There's the level of he is chasing this box, this glowing box, but he's also chasing something that's within him. And that's why so many of our favorite movies can be read as dreams or some kind of subjective manifestation of the person's own psyche. Is because so many of the great timeless stories are doing both of those things at the same time. And I think that is one of the coolest things that this I don't know. It's not like I haven't known that in particular cases, but I guess I don't realize how common that is. Odysseus is not just traveling the ocean. He's traveling to try to learn about himself and what he's all about.
Yeah, I totally agree. I find that there is a deep wisdom, and like a lot of the art that we enjoy is just because it's tapping into this.
Yeah. This is where I think it becomes like so mystical, right? He talks about a universal doctrine. And it is really true about if you look at all these different myths, you can find some formulation of, he says, it teaches that all the visible structures of the world, all things and beings, are the effects of a ubiquitous power out of which they rise, which supports and films them during the period of their manifestation, and back into which they must ultimately dissolve. This is the power known to science as energy, to the Melanesians as mana, to the Sioux Indians as Wakanda, the Hindu as Sakti, and the Christians as the power of God. Its manifestation in the psyche is termed by the psychoanalysts libido, and its manifestation in the cosmos is the structure and flux of the universe itself.
And this is where he says that the body and the limitations that we have in our body are the thing that's restricting our direct perception of the undifferentiated energy, because our minds are confined and can't fully conceive of the source. And that's what ritual and myth are doing, is opening the door to this source. And I maintain that one of the reasons I find comfort in this is because I find that there is a way in which it's almost like a materialistic mysticism.
Yes.
Where the truth of the matter is that we are these biological entities that are sort of confined to these bodies for this time. And we're opening our eyes to the deeper truth. But it's not like you're going to have like wings and a harp.
No, right. That is just one way of describing. Like, that's the thing. It's like one way of trying to put into language, and maybe not the way that works the best for you. One way of trying to get you to at least come to terms with what exactly it means to die. And, if you don't want to think of it as angels, maybe a different, more pantheistic form of understanding. We are just waves in this ocean, and then we go back into the earth and we decompose. But that universal source that we were briefly, in our evanescent way, kind of like a part of, we now go back into just part of the
drops of water.
Right. Drops of water. Exactly.
Yeah. I really like in this section where he talks about the concept of the fall.
Yeah.
And I've always been fascinated by this, like what the story of the fall of Adam and Eve means.
Yeah.
And he says it's just losing super consciousness and a collapse into unconsciousness. So at some point, you can think that we had maybe for Campbell before you're born or something. You're connected to the super consciousness.
Yeah. And then the phenomenal world kind of tricks you into losing touch with it.
Rips you out of contact with it.
Yeah. But I think in a lot of traditions, and maybe this is true in Christianity too, it's still always within you.
And that's where he says, where he quotes Jesus. I mean, again, like the kind of Christian that I would not like any of this.
Right.
Because it's you're not taking Jesus' literal words seriously. But sometimes Jesus does sound like a mystic. So Campbell quotes Jesus where he says, "Behold, the kingdom of God is within you." And that's a hard thing for like just a mainstream Christian to try to like understand. That sounds like exactly the sort of thing that you're not supposed to think as a Christian. You're supposed to submit to God. You are not divine. You are imperfect. Like God is the perfect one.
Yes.
It's not within you. That sounds like a super mystical. And the book of John gets super mystical in this way.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I think that like how to make sense of that or try to make it more consistent is it's through the surrendering and the rituals involved in the surrendering and the submission that you can discover that God has been within you the whole time.
The whole time, yeah. And the crucifixion is, Campbell says, the God sacrificing himself to himself. And so that's a metaphor. Like it really is, right? If Jesus was part of the Godhead, he was essentially God sacrificing himself. And so that's our journey. It's just a metaphor for our journey. We find it inside of ourselves, and in the end, we sacrifice ourselves to gain the super consciousness.
Yeah, right. And I think on a lot of these things, it's not that it wasn't there, it's that it was concealed. It's not something that we can see, not because it's not there, but because there's all this other stuff on top of it that we mistake for the ultimate.
Yeah. The scales must fall from our eyes so that we can see clearly.
Yeah, this stuff is really cool. And this is where myth is, he says, myth is but the penultimate. Like the ultimate is openness, that void or being beyond the categories, which are themselves manifestations of this power, into which the mind must plunge alone and be dissolved.
Okay, so look, like if anybody thinks that I'm drinking the Campbell Kool-Aid too much, that like this is unscientific or irrational, I just got to say, like, it brings me comfort to think of this as a way of coping with just the reality of death. This very Buddhist notion of dissolving being the, right? Like if myth is the penultimate step, viewing death as not just like ceasing to exist, but as dissolving into the one.
Yeah.
Just it's like a small little bit of comfort that I have in my deep, deep anxiety about dying.
Let him have this, rationalist listeners. You can go to Space Star Codex still or whatever, you know.
I can keep my numbers and still believe in dissolving into the one.
Exactly. Keep my numbers, but talk about dissolving into the one.
Don't touch my numbers.
That's good. You know, like, here's the thing. I'd much rather err on this side than on the side of number crunching and conceptual analysis. And
it's more interesting.
Yes, exactly.
It's just more interesting.
If it can get a little goofy and loopy at times, like this is the way to err. Yeah. And I feel like our hero's journey is in some ways a discovery of that, because I don't think either of us knew that we would be so interested in a lot of this kind of stuff when we started.
That's true. That's true. I really do think that these metaphors guide us. Like, and that's not a huge step, but it's one that it's not a step that I think I had made.
And it is a huge step in some ways. It allowed you to reconcile with your mortality. That's big.
True. Well, at least I'm trying. I'm still in the journeying phase. Yeah. I'm like, I might be in the belly of the whale.
I am the supernatural antagonist.
You're my magical guide. You're like a little elf that's giving me some power.
Of the same age, though, not a. I mean, pretty much.
You're the wise old man. Come on.
All right, good. Thank you, listeners. This was fun to dive into. And, we may come back to a lot of these ideas, I would imagine. I was just thinking, what if we had read this before seeing Kiss Me Deadly? If we had this in our minds, would we have interpreted the movie differently? And I think maybe.
No, I'm sure we would have. Probably like a 3-hour recording where we dive in.
It's probably for the best.
A metaphor of what that box is.
Yeah. All right. Well, join us next time on Very Bad Wizards.
Very mystical wizards.
Yeah.
We're turning into literal wizards.
It's true. That's the journey.
Than you have. Pay no attention to that man. Anybody can have a brain.
You're a very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Just a very bad wizard.